Hi, welcome to the next video on getting to know Excel. We're working from the Excel 2016 Bible, and basically I'm going to run through the kind of project, I don't know what you call it, but the example that it gives you on page 23 in chapter 1. And I'm going to stick fairly closely to it, but I'm going to stick in one or two little extras just to make it a bit more interesting, I hope. And you can follow with the book. I'm not going to do absolutely everything. There's a few things at the end that I'm going to leave the book to explain to you as well. The book will perhaps show one or two things a bit clearer than I do as well. And certainly you have time to look at the book. Whereas I might go quite quickly over some things. So, without more ado, let's get on with that section. So, turn with me, if you will, to page 23, and we'll have a look at the spreadsheet. So, here's the empty spreadsheet, just as the book asks you. We've opened it, we're on an empty page, we've only got the one sheet, so the worksheet and the workbook are effectively the same thing. It actually does say creating your first Excel workbook, but we're only working with a single spreadsheet. Effectively, a workbook, as I understand it, is a kind of collection of spreadsheets or worksheets. So don't be too put off by that. So it says by moving the cell point to cell A1, which is obviously in the top left. Now you can actually get there as well. Let me remind you by typing A1 here, and it will move the cursor to that top box. Not much help if it's A1, it's pretty obvious where A1 is, but if you needed to start somewhere else, that could be quite a good way of finding your place. So okay, some of this is pretty straightforward stuff, probably stuff that you're quite familiar with, so we're going to give it a title. Month, that's point 2, and then point 3 says call it projected sales, and we're not too bothered about the formatting yet, so the fact that projected sales is wider than the column itself at this stage is not important. Notice also that by hitting enter it's returned the cursor, the active cell, to A2. Okay, so the first thing it's talking about really is fill in. So we're going to do fill in. So here we are. We're going to do Jan short for January. Now I can type in Feb, Mar, Ap, and so on. But what it's trying to tell us is that there's this little black button down here, which is the fill button. Okay, and if I drag it down just one cell, you can see that it's telling me that the next item would be Feb. If I drag it down another cell, Mar, and so on. So I can bring it all the way down until I get to Dec for December. If I bring it down again, I'll get January again, so it cycles round. But I just want a 12-month view, so I'll do that, and it automatically gives me the months. If I typed in January, I would have got the months with the full names. If we then look at step 1, I think it is. I'm not sure. No, we've done that, so let's go on to the next page, page 24. We're now entering the data. So on B2, notice it's cell B2, I'm going to enter a value and it says enter the value 50,000. So there it is, 50,000. No problem there. The magic bit is really the next bit. So in step 2 on page 24, it says enter the formula, and it gives you this formula. So let's do this step by step. The first thing we do is equal. An equal tells it that it's now going to be a formula. You can see that the formula bit up here has kind of become active. The next thing is now you can type in B2 referring to the cell, but you can also simply click on it and it will automatically populate that with B2. Now beware, because if you do start playing around anywhere else, it will put it in as part of the formula. So it's going to be whatever is the value in the cell B2 times 103.5%, which is actually an increase of 3.5%. So the star is universally on computers the symbol for multiplying. simply because the X often refers to a letter as well, so it's not very good to use it as a symbol. So the star means multiply, and we're going to multiply it by 103.5. But if we simply multiplied it by 103.5, it would literally multiply 50,000 by 103.5. So we're going to multiply it by 103.5%, which is a 3.5% increase. So hit enter, and we get that increase. Now we do the same trick. Click back on there, grab the fill button, and work all the way down. Now this time it doesn't tell us what it's going to say in each cell, so we have to wait until we let go. But I'm going to go down to December, fill in, and hey presto, we've got the entries automatically. Now if I click on the second cell, notice that it looks almost exactly the same. The difference is the first cell where we put the formula is B2, and then it's 3.5% increase on that. The next one is B3, B4, B5. So basically, by doing the autofill, all I've done is I've increased in each cell, it refers back to the previous cell. Simply refers back to the previous cell. But it's flexible. So imagine, let's just show this by changing that 5 to a 6. Watch what happens to these numbers here when I change the 5 to a 6 and then enter. Hey presto, they've all changed. Okay, so it's dynamic. So one of the good things about using formulae is if anything does change, I'm going to put it back to 50,000. So 50,000, it goes back. So if anything changes, it automatically ripples through all the data. It can be a problem as well, but in general, that's what you want. So it reflects data as it really is. Okay, so we've entered our basic data. And if you move on to page 25, you'll see a picture of the spreadsheet, which should look pretty much like the spreadsheet I've got. And if you're following along on a spreadsheet, then it should look like the spreadsheet that you've got. Now, basically, from here on, he's kind of playing along with a few things in the book, just to give you a taster of what other things we could be looking at and how we can improve our presentation of spreadsheets. So the first thing is formatting the numbers. And as he says, it's a little bit difficult to read because these have got 2 decimal places. It happens. These haven't. And in fact, if by chance one of these came out to an exact number, then again it would look like one of these. So it can be a little difficult. It'd be good to have them as 2 decimal places. Now there are several ways of doing this. He doesn't really talk about all of them, but let's select the numbers themselves. And I think the book actually suggests that you go to the home and you go in the number group, which is this group here. Notice it's the whole group. Okay. You click on this drop-down number format and you can actually pick the one that you want to use. Now there is a second way of doing it, and I'm going to show you that. And that is having selected your area, you right-click there, and you'll see that there's an option here which is Format Cells. So I'm going to click on that. This, in a way, is the old way of doing it. And you'll see you get the same options here as you had in that general drop-down. A little bit easier to see, I think. Now I'm going to choose Number. And notice that it's got 2 decimal places. So if I OK that, what it will do is simply insert the 2 decimal places in that first number. Okay. So that's one way of doing it. But he quite rightly is saying, well, this is projected sales. So if we go up again to this area he's talking about, and we click on currency, now it doesn't look much of a change here because I've already put the decimal places in. But it gives you the pound symbol and it gives you the quotes. Now you can reformat that. You can get it to do currency, but with your own format. But we're not going to play around with it too much. He's also suggesting that really, for us, if we were doing projected sales, we're not interested to the nearest penny. The nearest pound is enough. So in fact, if you go back up to this number area, one of these other buttons here, if you hover over it, that tells you it increases the decimal. And if we hover over the next one, it tells you it decreases the decimal. Show fewer decimal places. So I'm going to click on that, and what I hope it will do is it will change everything from 2 decimals to 1 decimal. What I want you to do is I want you to watch the value for July. Keep your eye on the value for July. So I'm going to click on that button, reduce it by 1, and notice that it will take 1 decimal place off. But notice that it was 0.77 on July, so it's rounded it up. If I reduce it again, keep your eye on July again, it's 2.8, so it obviously should become 61,463. So if I click on that, it gets rid of the decimals, and indeed it rounds it up. So it's an intelligent, if I increase by 2 again, go back to where we were. So it's remembering the number, it's remembered the real value. If I go for something else, like this one in May, and I remove the decimal places, because 57,376.15 rounds down, nothing changes. So if the 1.15 becomes 0.2, but then when I round down, the 0.2 just disappears. So it's rounding properly, which is quite useful. So that's one of the things he talks about, changing the general number to a currency and making it just look a little bit better. He's then talking about making your worksheet look fancier. Now he seems to say you can do it just by sticking it in your by selecting any part of the table. I would recommend you select the whole table. So select that table, okay? He just says activate any cell within the range, but I find that doesn't always work. So select the whole table and then choose insert, so we're moving on to a different part of the ribbon, insert, and then tables and table, okay? And it's saying you can create the table, so it seems a bit odd because I've already got a table, you think. But this actually changes it slightly, so we're going to accept that. We'll OK that, and yes, it's made a nice table. Notice that it has also resized the column so projected sales come through, and you can do quite a lot with this now. The first thing, which again he's talking about, is to change the actual table style. Now notice that if you do, you've got various ways of getting information that you want, so forget that for now. We'll select the whole table again, go up to table styles and click the big down button. Let me do that again a little bit slower. Notice you've got up and down. The up won't do anything. Oh, it will do something, okay, but the down will do something. So you're just changing 3 at a time. But if you click this big down one here, this will open up a much bigger selection. And by holding the mouse over the various options, you can actually see what it will look like. So you can choose one that you like. I don't find these terribly attractive, and there's not a huge amount of variation in them, but they may be enough just to give you a little bit of pizzazz and make your presentation stand out a bit. So okay, we'll select that. Okay. And that's pretty much what he's done in terms of making your worksheet look fancier in terms of tables. So if you move on to page 26, you'll see that, in fact, I've chosen the same colour as him. That's spooky. Okay. He's then talked about summing the values. Well, let me just emphasise that you could play around with this a lot more. And in particular, by clicking on this bit here down the bottom, don't even know what you call that, but you can actually do quite a lot of playing around with these tables, including some of the stuff we're going to talk about. So, okay. Summing the values, basically again, he's said activate any cell. Does seem to work, but I'm going to play safe and select the whole table. Choose table tools and design. There's the design. And table style options, which is here. And then notice total rows isn't selected, so we'll select that, and it basically just adds a row. Now you could do that manually. You can do that yourself. That's quite nice. But if I Control Z to undo it, you can type in, so you can type in total here. Now it's actually added a row automatically, but I don't want that. What I want to do is equal sum, open bracket, select the top and drag all the way down to the bottom, so it creates a range rather than a single cell. Close that cell and it's summed it as well. Now that's slightly different from the way it would do it with using the method that the book uses. I can in fact go on here, I can do that, I can set it to, well, let's change the text slightly, put a space in, and I'm going to set it to go right as well, so it kind of distinguishes it. So I've done it manually. I've played around a little bit with the texts, but if we get rid of that, we can go back and do it his way and simply go to Design, Table Style Options, Total Row, and there it is. And notice if I hold that over the cell, it actually doesn't use sum, it uses subtotal. So it's horses for courses. There are often different ways of doing different things. Notice as well, if you do use this automated way of doing it, you click on this down arrow and you can actually choose a whole load of other options. So if you want to know what the average projected sales is, you'd have to change the text, but your average projected sales is 60,842. If you wanted to know what the largest sale was, well, that's pretty obvious because it's slowly increasing. It's a pretty boring sort of figure. In fact, why don't I stick in here in June? It's going to actually do really well. I'm going to remember this is 61,500 effectively there. So in June it does really well. It goes to 74,234. Okay, now notice because of the formula, everything is working from there. I've forgotten completely what it was. So I'm going to say it goes back to 59,500. Okay, so we've just got this one little blimp, as it were, that goes up. Let's now do this one again, and we'll get the min, we'll go the max, and it's selected my 74,000 as the max. Let's see what happens if I average. Let's raise the average a little bit, and if I go back to the sum, I get the full sum for that table. Now I wanted to do that because we're also going to look at creating a chart. So we'll select that table but not the total. Okay. We'll select Insert and then the recommended charts in the charts area. And he suggests we choose the second of the two. And notice, because I created artificially this extra blimp, we've actually got the June value showing well above all the others. I wanted to do that because otherwise it looks pretty boring. It was pretty much a straight line all the way. Okay, and you can play around with this just as you can play around with most of the other stuff that we've done, and some of this we will be looking at. So if you right click, you've got various options here that you can add things. You can come up to the formatting or the design. You can change the chart type. So if we want to make it look a bit chunkier, don't even know what that means really, I'd have to think about that. Let's change the chart type again to something that might make a bit more sense. That makes a bit more sense. We could even make it a bit more coloured. You know, you've got a whole variety of options that you can play with and see what you like. And we will be looking at these as we work through the book. So this is really a taster. It's just giving you a feel for some of the things that we can do and can do fairly easily. So hopefully that gives you confidence that what you're going to be looking at is worth looking at. The book will show you how to print, which I think is pretty obvious, and how to save your workbook, which I think is pretty obvious too, but you can work through the book for that, so I'm not going to spend any time on that. So that was a kind of quick romp through Chapter 1. Look forward to seeing you on Chapter 2.